In terms of the introduction, my name is Jacques van Zyl, and I'm a master's student in industrial psychology from the University of the Western Cape. I also come with almost 14 years of work experience, and I'm a member of the Golden Key International Honor Society. So this presentation is only meant to be used as supporting material in preparation for your examinations. This does not replace your prescribed textbook or study guides that your university might have provided you. The following are the learning outcomes for this presentation, but to make it easier, I've included a shortened version on the next slide with pictures. I've just added pictures to the main learning outcomes for this presentation. As you can see, we start at the 12 o'clock position with definitions. Then we move over to the learning management system. Then we look at learning theories. Then we look at the concept of the training needs analysis. Then we look at the characteristics of participants. Then we look at the steps in designing an online program. Then we will look at advantages and disadvantages. And lastly, the barriers to e-learning. Before we run into e-learning, it is important to understand a few definitions. So there are three definitions: synchronous online learning, asynchronous online learning, and blended online learning. When it comes to synchronous online learning, it refers to facilitated learning. So you attend a class at a certain time and there is continuous interaction between you and the teacher. So in this case, it's on site, it's at a fixed time, it can be at your place of work, and it can be even at your university. So this is almost like going to school. With asynchronous online learning, it's self-paced learning. So you choose the time and the space. You can go online when it's convenient. There's no fixed time for classes, and the learners can be anywhere in the world. So this is almost like your e-learning platforms such as Allison, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, just to list a few. Now, blended online learning combines synchronous learning with asynchronous learning. So that means you might attend a course where some part of the day you have to attend a class with a facilitator and the rest of the work you do online. We will now talk about the learning management system, also abbreviated to LMS. The LMS assists with the creation, the management, and the delivery of an online learning program. It can be used by schools and businesses. It's very important that learning and development professionals are computer literate in order to successfully manage an LMS. So the tools in an LMS can assist you to create, for example, the overview section, the calendar, course announcements, contact details, lessons, to the formal assignments and assessments, as well as the pre-course and post-course surveys. It's very important that when you make use of an LMS and in designing a course, that you make use of clear and concise writing, simplicity, and the creative use of italics and bold fonts to emphasize readability in order to make your work or the program as graphically appealing as possible. If you look to the left, do you think that piece of information is clear and concise? I don't think so. But if you look to the right, you will see the use of colors and icons, and it's those kind of things that have a huge impact on an e-learning program and on the success rate of the course. The first theory we will be looking at is behaviorism. Behaviorism focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. The students can easily learn through reinforcement. Constant feedback can tell them whether what they are doing is right or wrong. So how will this impact online learning design? Well, feedback can be provided when students either answer information incorrectly or when they answer the question correct. It's therefore important to include assessment activities in the system. Next, we look at cognitivism. This is a learning theory that focuses on how information is received, organized, stored, and retrieved by the mind. It uses the mind as an information processor, like a computer. Therefore, this theory looks beyond behavior and it views learning as internal mental processes. Now, the implications towards online learning design is that the presentation of material should be engaging, interesting, and stimulating enough to assist the learning process. And it's recommended that the activities should be structured logically. Now we will look at constructivism. This is the theory that says learners construct knowledge rather than just passively taking information. As people experience the world and reflect upon those experiences, they build their own representations and incorporate new information into their pre-existing knowledge. The implications for e-learning is that online activities can be designed to promote creative thinking in constructing meaning. So the focus could be on real-life problem solving and creative writing. Now let's consider humanism. The humanistic learning theory harnesses the idea that if students are upset, sad, or distressed, they're less likely to be able to focus on learning. This encourages teachers to create a classroom environment that helps students feel comfortable and safe so that they can focus on learning. Behavior is seen as a consequence of human choice and free will. Now, the positive implications in terms of online learning design is online learning content should be made relevant to the learner's interests, feelings, and attitudes. It may be difficult to decipher the learner's interests in an online environment. Next up, we will talk about andragogy. Andragogy learning theories focuses on giving students an understanding of why they are doing something, coupled with lots of hands-on experiences and less instruction so that they can tackle the things themselves. Adults are seen to learn best when they choose the content and their respective method of learning. Now, the implication for online learning design is that online discussion forums can be created to allow self-directed learning. It's important that students are given the flexibility to learn at their own pace. Now let's consider flexible learning and its impact on online learning design. It's important to look at the various resources at your disposal. Harness it, use it. Whether it's the use of videos and audio equipment, to provide a more higher quality experience. Combine both synchronous and asynchronous forms of learning to provide a richer learning experience. It's also important to keep up to date with the latest developments in the field of technology. It could be that there's a new program out that can assist with providing a more richer learning experience. It's thus important to keep on developing technological competencies. Always work on developing your computer literacy. Learn about the programs that you are using. There are some questions to consider before deciding between face-to-face or e-learning. So the first question is, what is the specific training need? Well, I'm going to list an example. Let's consider first aid. First aid is a better course for face-to-face learning because you are teaching people life-saving skills. But let's say it's a course on COVID and safety regulations. An e-learning course might suffice because you can teach people certain definitions and all the rules that need to be adhered to. Second question is, what would be the most suitable method? Again, you would have to consider, are we teaching people theory or are we teaching people practical steps or tips? Next, we consider how complicated is the content, because maybe we want to teach people academic content, but maybe it's necessary to have a face-to-face session where you have a subject matter expert that explains the difficult work. Next, you will have to consider if all the training participants will have access to the required technology. That being said, for an e-learning course, you will need a good desktop computer or a laptop that can perform at the necessary software requirements. Because it's internet, you will need a stable internet connection. Fiber will, of course, be highly recommended. And of course, no load shedding. Another thing to consider is, will the participants be technologically competent? Because it's one thing to have a computer, but if you don't know how to use it, it might make the experience very negative. You have to consider if the participants are self-motivated and organized, because that will contribute to the success of the course. And lastly, are the students geographically dispersed, or are they very close in proximity? That being said, can you invite all the students tomorrow for a cup of coffee? Or are they all separated in different parts of the world? Because that will also influence your decision to choose between a face-to-face classroom setup or an e-learning course. The following participants are random people who are going to enroll in an e-learning program. But it's very important that you understand their characteristics, because at the end of the day, that contributes to the success of the e-learning program. But you might be wondering, why is it important? It's really important to understand who's going to participate in the program, especially before you start designing a program. You have to know if your participants are novice or advanced learners, because that will decide what assessment techniques you will bring into your e-learning program. But we will follow the principles of adult learning when we design an e-learning program. Adult learners willingly participate when the purpose is clear and they have a need to acquire the knowledge and experience. So it's important that from the get-go, the participants are aware of what is the purpose of the e-learning program. Let's make a practical example. Are you teaching the participants maybe concepts of labor relations in an e-learning course? Could it be that you are teaching them the steps of conciliation, mediation, and arbitration, for example? It's important to note that adults come with previous experiences that can aid the learning experience. Previous work experience really add value to learning, but it's important to note on the flip side that even a negative experience can actually halt the learning experience. It can demotivate an adult learner. Adults possess the capacity to be self-directed learners. That means the moment they get home, they sign in on the program without anyone else telling them to go and complete the program. Adults may be inhibited by negative past learning experiences, which is a repeat of what I mentioned earlier. Think about a time you were in high school. Maybe you had mathematics. Maybe the teacher didn't give a good mark in an assignment. That experience can make or break your experience of that specific module. It can potentially demotivate you to really focus on the module. It can even encourage you to deregister from it. It can also motivate you to work harder, but the negative experience doesn't easily go away. Now think about adult learners. Maybe you didn't like accountancy in high school, but now you have to do it a course for the workplace. That negative experience can follow you all the way into that program, and it can have an impact on performance. Adults may be either intrinsically or extrinsically motivated to participate in the learning experience. Maybe the manager can have or institute a reward for the participants who complete the program. Maybe there can be a reward for the people who participate and successfully pass the final assessment. Usually, certificates are provided at the end of most learning courses as a way to motivate students. In some scenarios, they even provide digital certificates that can be loaded on the LinkedIn platform. And lastly, adults have the capacity for critical self-reflection. So it might be important to really bring in a platform for the participants to provide self-reflection on their experience of the e-learning course. So there are some steps in designing an online learning program. I'm going to be brief, but my recommendation is that you go through the learning material and read through it a few times. But to sum it up as short and sweet as possible, firstly, you need to know your participants. As we have mentioned in this presentation, you need to understand if your participants are novice users or advanced users. You need to identify the learning outcomes. because that will determine what information will be added to the course, because you do not want to add information that's irrelevant. You will develop a learning strategy, because at the end of the day, it's about how is the information or the course communicated in the organization, and how do you ensure a high participation and completion rate. You need to determine how the information will be sequenced. You basically decide on how you will structure your first chapter until your last chapter. Then you need to look at how the learners will be assessed. Will they be completing normal assignments, or will they be doing multiple choice questions? Meaningful feedback can be included in the system. Maybe the questions which students didn't answer correctly, you can build in a feature where you respond to them and tell them the correct answer and why they were incorrect in the first place. Something optional I added is maybe provide an option for a pre-course and post-course feedback from the student. The pre-course helps to find out what the student thought he or she is going to learn, and the post-course can assist to find out what was their experience of this online learning program. We are now going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages associated with e-learning programs. So let's look at the positive points. It's easy to make revisions as the training needs change. It could be that in the literature you find there's maybe a mistake. You can go to the system, you can make the necessary amendment and save. If a lot of books were printed for a class and one mistake is found, it's usually quite a mission to make the necessary changes, and it's very costly to reprint all the material. Secondly, you can reach a much larger audience, thus greater accessibility. Think about it. If you have an online program and you are presenting it via Zoom or Google Meet or any other platform, you can invite as many people as possible. And if it's an online system where there's only course content, so many people can sign on and participate. The third point is online simulated experiences contribute to the deeper learning of material. Because you can do a lot of things on an online system, you can really be creative. You can really simulate an explanation and really add video content to enhance the learning experience of the student. Fourthly, collaboration is made possible through e-learning because you can add a discussion forum for all the students to participate in and provide the necessary comments. Next, technological competencies are developed before entering the workforce. Think about the job that you would like to do one day. You can easily do an e-learning course and learn some material and also develop your technological skills before you enter the workforce. You can study at your own time and pace, and that's one of the main advantages of e-learning, because you can sign in late at night and complete a chapter, and then maybe early in the morning before going out in the day, you can go and sign in and do the rest. Knowledge management becomes easier for recruitment and retention purposes, because now you can send your most critical staff or the staff that you really want to retain on e-learning courses, and maybe provide a course that will be to the benefit not only to the organization but to that staff member for career pathing purposes. Employers can implement just-in-time training opportunities, and that means if a skill is needed or knowledge is needed, they can implement a program very quickly, dependent on if the system is ready with the necessary information. An example would be a company called KnowBefore. They provide training in IT, especially concepts such as IT security. If your company needs to update everyone's knowledge about internet threats, they can quickly consult with KnowBefore and get everyone to participate in an e-learning program to learn about the internet threats. And lastly, the time taken to deliver training programs are reduced. And the reason for this, you don't need a professor to sit the whole day and present now, because an online system can do the facilitation for the professor or the academic. Doesn't mean it replaces the academic, because you still need the academics to really prepare the information. Now, we're going to look at some of the disadvantages. I've also added a few to complete the list. Firstly, not all employees may possess the necessary technological competence, and that means not everyone is comfortable to work either on a computer or work on an unknown software system. There are different e-learning platforms, and some e-learning platforms are plug and play. You can literally just click next and move on to the next screen to get to the information you need. Some, however, are more complex. Secondly, not all employees are self-motivated or organized. That means someone can sign in on a program today and tomorrow not even touch the system and not complete the program at all. Thirdly, participants on e-learning programs can feel alienated if there are no engagements with other students. This usually happens when you have an e-learning course, but there's no discussion forum where you can interact with other students. Then, the effectiveness of e-learning must still be established. The reason for this is there are many sites that provide e-learning courses, and it always begs the question whether people are actually just learning or are they just clicking next and guessing their way through the assessment part. Next, maintaining learning engagement might be a challenge. The reason being is all your students might need to complete a course, but there's no engagement with a course facilitator, no one to do the check-ins, and no one to motivate them to complete the program. Cheating prevention during formal assessments also pose a big challenge. Because think about it, some programs might have an assessment part. It can easily be a multiple choice part, and nothing prevents students from hosting a WhatsApp call or a Google Meet conversation to discuss the possible answers. E-learning is also limited to certain disciplines. It's easy to find e-learning courses on most topics out there, but you will realize some topics you might not find anything in e-learning. Let's take, for example, mathematics. Mathematics might assist you in teaching you the concepts of mathematics, but it could be that they don't dive into the practical part. Thus, there's a discipline that still needs more exposure in terms of e-learning. It is an example, of course, and I'm pretty sure there might be other programs out there, but it's important to note that not all disciplines can be found on the e-learning platforms. The other disadvantage is there's a greater focus on theory instead of the application. And that brings me back to mathematics. Also accountancy. There's a big course on accountancy on the one platform, and they teach you all the necessary concepts. They teach you about the credit side and the debit side, but they don't really go into adjustments, for example. And this is just to list an example. And the thing is, sometimes the application part is the part where you learn the most. And lastly, the lack of communication can also affect skills development. And also, there's also a lack of communication skills development at the same time. Because if you're doing online courses and there's no opportunity for collaboration, it affects the whole learning experience at the end of the day. So based on this, are you keen on trying an e-learning program, or would the disadvantages put you off of trying something new? There are barriers to e-learning, and I'm going to list a few. So senior managers might not be supportive of the employees wanting to participate in e-learning programs because, it might take them away from the office. It could be that there's unstable internet connection at the office as well, and load shedding is not making it any easier. It could be there's unreliable technical support. Employees could also lack the necessary technological competence to work with e-learning platforms. When we speak about technological competence, we look at computer literacy and the ability to organize and use different software platforms. Budget constraints also play a big part because that means there's no money to buy the technology required and there's no money to upgrade the existing systems in the organization. Individual characteristics can play a role, and if the students are unmotivated, it's going to be difficult to get them to participate in an e-learning program. Adults also fear failure, and it takes one negative learning experience to really limit them and prevent them from participating in an e-learning program.